All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Word with Ty Brownlow. I'm your host, Ty Brownlow. And remember, everyone, no one is worthless. No story is worthless. And today, ladies and gentlemen, we are going deep, okay? Deep into the mind, deep into our feelings, deep into our hearts. Joining me all the way from Italy, okay? All right, yes, ladies and gentlemen, we're going international today. Please put your hands together for Dr. Rita Fierro.
It's great to be with you today, Ty.
Thank you. Look, the pleasure is all mine. I welcome you tenfold to my platform. I know we had our little chat before we got started here, but we're going to have some fun today. And as I said before, man, we're going deep into the mind. We're going deep into our feelings. We're going to talk about some things metaphysical or what have you, for all my people out there with the whoa, yes, it's going to be one of those whoa shows. Yes, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. So let me just give you all a little bit on Dr. Rita Fierro here. She is the founder and CEO. You know we're about that CEO life over here. Of Fierro Consulting. All right. And look, we're just going to get started. We're going to go right in. And are you ready?
I am ready.
Okay. All right. Now, the first question or the first topic I want to ask or talk to you about is, can you talk to us about the bridge between systematic racism and healing?
Thank you I love your energy, and I love that you're starting me out strong and hard, go right in, right? Let's dive in. I'm really passionate about systemic racism, not since the past 2 or 3 years that it's become a buzzword, but I've been studying racism for the past 30 years. First with my master's in sociology, and then with my Ph.D. in African American studies. And the reason, and I had a chapter in my dissertation where I looked at 3 systems: the welfare system, the child welfare system, and the legal system. And I was looking how after the 60s, they managed to backlash to reinstate institutional racism instead of actually responding to the desegregation laws that had been passed. So basically, if you look at the history from the 60s to the 80s, in each system, there's just a way that they backlash. And so, although on the surface it looks like we won over racism because the term racism is no longer in the legal structure, in practice, it gets perpetuated. And it's perpetuated in a way that we no longer have to say the word race. So it's, Michelle Alexander, of course, wrote The New Jim Crow and talked about this in the criminal justice system. Every system shows that. So in my dissertation work in 2006, I looked at these 3 systems. In my more recent work, I actually looked at 10 systems, and I see the same patterns in all 10 systems, because basically all of our institutions were founded in enslavement. And so there are these patterns. And what systems do is, by nature, they preserve themselves. It's just the nature of systems. So I make the analogy of a seed in a tree, right? So we say the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Yes, that's true. It's also true that if you staple a bunch of oranges to an apple tree, it's not an orange tree, right? An apple tree is going to bear apples, no matter how many oranges are on it. You can put a basket of oranges on it. You can do lots of things. You can prune it. It's still an apple tree. So I love that since George Floyd was murdered, we're talking so much about systemic racism. And as someone who's been in the work for 30 years, I felt a tremendous amount of relief, in particular in talking with white people, that we kind of shifted from what racism to racism, right? Thank God that the conversation has shifted. Yet, I don't think we're seeing that bigger picture. And so I'm really passionate about the need for us to look at the patterns across all systems so that we can actually look at the whole tree. Because to me, the reason why our systems have been ineffective at dismantling white supremacy in our systems is because we just keep pruning the tree. And what happens when you prune a tree? It gets stronger, it gets smaller in the short term, but in the long run, it gets stronger, right? So that's the piece around systemic racism, and like studying racism has been like a passion of mine. I thought that was my life's work, but it's not. We'll talk about that later. And so I'm also an organizational development consultant. And what I know from organizational development work is that the intention that was set when an organization is founded outlives the founders. So if I'll think about it. So my parents had a family business, right? And I consulted in it 1 year. And when I walked in there and saw how these 45 people were interacting, I was like, holy moly, this is like the whole dysfunction of my family expanded to 45 more people. I was like, oh my God, this is insane. Because that's what organizations do. And even now that my parents are gone, or if they're new owners, there's something about how systems, how groups of people, how culture reinforces itself, that it's not easy to shift. It's the seed, right? It's the seed to the tree. It's not easy to shift. You can't shift an apple tree to an orange tree. What you can do is you can uproot it and plant a new tree. So where healing comes in is that when I went back in the past 2 years in this work that I've been doing, I went back to look at, okay, if the seed sets the tree and the intention sets the organization, then what was the original intention in each of our systems? And I tried to backtrack in time. And I like to say the expression, if you know the seeds, the fruits won't surprise you. So bottom line, kind of spoiler alert, all of our institutions were founded in some variation of fear. And so because they were founded in some variation of fear and some variation of separation, we have what we have today. Like over 530 years, it looks the way it looks today. So the reason why healing is important, because healing, and the indigenous societies did this through rites of passages programs, or rites of passages rituals. Some people in the African American community have been trying to pick it up again with rites of passage programs, and other people as well. The reason why healing is important is because growing up is actually about being able to live beyond fear. So if we are to transform our systems, we have to be able to make that passage to moving beyond fear. Otherwise, all the new things we create will be based in the old seed. And the last thing I'll say about that is that in the analogy of the tree, if you've ever seen a 500-year-old tree, it doesn't survive alone. It's been nourished for 500 years. So I would argue that our culture of white supremacy isn't just the 45 supporter or the KKK, or, it's easy to point fingers, but there's internalized white supremacy in all of us. And so that's the soil that's nourishing the beast. And if we want to uproot it, we have to be willing to look at ourselves in the mirror and confront the fears that have us have even the need to feel superior to each other.
Okay, look, let me just say, like, your analogies are really hitting home. And, as we talk, as you said, you think of it as a tree. And even 500 or so years, there has to be, as you just said, there has to be something else. It's just not the tree itself, something that's supporting this tree. And if the soil around the, tree has been treated to like, okay, let's just keep this going. Let's just keep this going, because you change the soil sometimes, it changes the, nature of the plant or tree itself. But if the tree's been deep rooted in this soil for a very long time, and that soil's been tended to by those who want to keep this, certain fruit or what have you around, as you said, if it started off as an apple tree and now you want to change it to an orange tree, you just can't go up there and staple oranges to it and call it an orange tree. You have to uproot, and the next tree you put in, if you don't change the soil, it doesn't necessarily mean that tree is going to take off as well, so you have to change what's around, and, like equating that to the system, like, yes, the system has to change. Like, we have to change everything that's going on. And, and I'm just going to speak on my own personal feelings and theories sometimes. I think sometimes, and especially as a African-American male, pushing 50, I'm just going to say, hey, I've seen a lot. I haven't seen as much as, some of my elders have, but I've seen a lot. I've been places. I've seen the good, seen a lot of bad, seen a lot of good as well. And really, it's all about the change that we want to make, but it has to start with us internally, because as you said, it's easy to blame. Look, it's easy to put, point fingers at, this person, that person. Well, and being in a place like Chicago, I could tell you, there's a lot of segregation, like deep rooted here in this city alone, and when it comes to the police department, that's, we don't even have enough time for that, but I'm thinking about one person in particular. I think he's called Commander Burke. But Commander Burke has, he was one of the original Daley's chief of police officers or what have you. And his history just on terrorizing the black community alone. Look, I don't even want to speak on certain things that, I've read about that he's done or what have you. But change the soil, people. We change the soil, we could change the outcome of the product, change the outlook of the tree, and, make it into what we want it to be instead of what it is. So
I'll add something to that.
Come on.
And I'm aware that it's easier for me to say this as a white person, right? Like that there's a privilege and a positionality that I hold there. Mm-hmm. But what the terror does is that it has us in the illusion that the system can't change. But systems are created by groups of people who come together to meet a need. That's what it's a group of people who say, you know what, this problem, we need to do something about it. So let's create something. Let's create an institution. Let's create a system. Let's create a set of rules. Let's create a set of processes. And then over time, like 300 years later and 400 years later and even 50 years later, we're so used to it that we think, oh, well, that's just the way it is. My people like to say, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Right? Like there's an assumption that you're powerless. Now, individuals, I would say, can be powerless in the face of a system, but collectives are not. Like we have the collective power to change any system we set our minds to. But of course, it takes movement building. And it takes us doing that healing work to not drink the Kool-Aid, to not believe that we don't have the power.
Okay, all right. Mindset, people. Mindset. As the old folks would say, turn the dial in your mind, boy. Then, you can see a different picture on the TV, So I'm just saying, I have an affinity for like old Southern like jargon sometimes. So, I make a right here. But that's okay.
We got to know where we come from.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Yes. I told y'all, heavy, okay? Heavy. We're going there, okay? We're going there, people. Okay, so you have a book that's going to be released in about a month from now, but it's called Digging Up the Seeds of White Supremacy. Can you tell us all about this?
So in part, I already did. So the whole concept of the tree and the 10 systems and going back in history to look at what is the seed is basically the backbone of the book. So in the book, what I do is look at what's the individual intention and the collective intention that birthed each system. So going back in history, what was the first action that a human being took in the direction of creating a system? And what was the first law that was passed? That shows that there's a collective desire and intent around that, right? And what I also do in the book is I mentioned how it boils down to all systems were born in variations of fear. I talk in particular about 3: control, saviorism, and safety. So based on the analysis that I did, the historical analysis I did, I would say 2 of our systems were born in safety, 4 in control, and 4 in saviorism. And then, because, like we just said, nothing changes without us looking in the mirror, at the beginning of each chapter and looking at these aspects of fear, I share with you the journey that COVID has had me take in terms of looking at myself and looking at my own sense of entitlement and the white supremacy that I had to see in myself when in a week COVID wiped out all my income. Right? So I was confronted with a life that I never thought, like something that I didn't have before. And so all my entitlement and white privilege kind of showed up to the surface. I was pissed at God and I was pissed at everybody. And I just, I spent a little time just being angry. And luckily I had enough kind of healing tools to steward myself through that grief and that anger. But I'm basically offering a pathway, not the pathway, because each of us has our own journey, right? But a pathway to look at, okay, if we're going to transform fear in our systems, this is one of the ways that we can get real with ourselves. And this is one of the ways that we can connect with source and connect with our bodies and connect with everything we do have, even when everything around us is an earthquake and we're in the highest state of fear, right? Like, how do we find certainty and how do we find steadiness and how do we find surrender in the face of life looking as upside down as the pandemic had and a racial reckoning had it look?
Look, introspective, okay? That's the word I want to drop right now. And just for you to even say that, because COVID has affected everyone, all right? Everyone. We could sit up here and say, oh, well, I wasn't. Everyone has been affected by COVID in some shape, form, or capacity. Whether it was you working at your job, now you're working at home. Even if you were working at home, you're probably used to getting food at a certain price. Inflation has, increased. So your food doesn't cost as much as it used to. You may have gone to the grocery store to get groceries or what have you. Once upon a time when shelves were fully stocked, scarce. It sent people into a state of mass hysteria. And toilet paper and hand sanitizer, I just start with that, but, just the littlest things. And as you said, it made you take a look at yourself because, hey, it totally wiped out my means of income. This is the way I was used to making, getting my money, providing my way of life or what have you. Now that this has happened, I'm enraged now. And even to the point where, you were like, oh God, I'm just lashing out. But you didn't let that consume you. You had the mindset to not let it overtake you. Yes. Is it troubling? Yes. Is it difficult? Yes. But as I like to say, there's always light at the end of the tunnel. If you're looking for it, if you're looking for that light, it will be there. It may be real dim and, it may be it may be the shape of pin cap or what have you, you know, but there is light if you focus like hard enough and, you know, like just focus, reset, repivot, or whatever, you know, the new slang is these days or whatever. And then, you know, you carry on. And I'm glad that that happened, you know, like even for myself, you know, like I can tell you, I was working at a school. I had a bus route, you know, I got paid for that bus route, plus the time I spent at school. COVID hit, no more bus route, you know, and that was an extra means of making money for myself. Once that cut out and we went remote, now I just had to rely on the school salary. Well, that made things tighten up a little bit, you know, in my household. And I had to change. I had to, you know, basically find something to do with my time and, you know, my mental space, because I could sit up here and be mad at the world like, oh, you know, this isn't like right. Like, why is this happening? Why don't they just open up the school? Why don't they just do this? Why can't we just go back to doing X, Y, and Z? But no, the one thing I've learned, okay, which has always been told to me, is you learn the culture first, then you make change. Okay? You just can't go in with your guns blazing like, hey, this is going to happen. No. That's just not how it works. I know it works on TV like that, but in real life, it doesn't work that way. So, okay, look.
I learned that lesson the hard way. But I wanted to add that, like, COVID was an awakening to a great sense, because we never had control. Life was never certain. It just isn't.
Yeah.
Right? If you just put the fact that anyone could die at any moment in time, right? So we don't have control over life, but we live in the illusion that we do. And then when stuff doesn't go our way, we get pissed off about it. First one, right? Life doesn't go my way, everything sucks, right? And so to some extent, like, COVID was a breaking of the veil. It was a being able to actually, like, be in life with the uncertainty that life already is, as opposed to pretending that it's certain while it actually isn't. And that's why all the upheaval, because we're used to living in the illusion of that certainty, and suddenly we can't even pretend, because we're all in it together. It's not happening to one person, right? We're all in it together. And sometimes, like, I think about how, to some extent, I felt in the US, it was refreshing, because folks that I knew that were used to keeping it all together and always saying they were fine, like, now we're actually talking about grief and loneliness, and it's refreshing to hear human beings say, you know, the loneliness is getting to me. I can't take it anymore. It's like, oh, finally, we have some realness amongst us, as opposed to this keeping it together, which is the price of that control, right? That then we get to be alone in our solitude, but we get to put on a good face while we do it, right? We get to look good while we do it.
See, the term strength in adversity, like, comes to mind, you know, just like listening to you, you know, say that, you know, like, that's what's popping into my head. And as you said, like, yeah, I had it all together, you know, and hey, I'm living this life. I'm going over here. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. But, you know, like, a cancer is something that's festering at the bottom, that hasn't, you know, that has, like, lain dormant for years or what have you. Now, all of a sudden, it shows itself. Oh, like, okay, like, what the hell is this? You know, like, I don't even understand what's going on. What do you mean I can't do that? Oh, wait a minute, such and such passed away? What do you mean I can't go here? Why am I doing this? Why am I doing that? Like, you start asking all these questions, and you really, and as you said, the veil has been broken, has been pulled back, has been stomped, burnt, whatever you want to call it, you know, it's gone. Okay? It's not even, it's not there anymore. And this is really the truth. So, whoo, you know, and we're old enough to catch this reference. I'm thinking about a John Carpenter movie with Roddy Piper, and he had these glasses, and every time he put on the glasses, he saw the truth, and he saw what people really were. He saw what the billboards really said. Oh God, I can't think of the name of it, but You know, even though it's an 80s movie, you know, a lot of that holds true today because, you know, once COVID hit, as you said, now we really see what's going on. Now we're really going to see how strong you are. Now we're really going to see, you know, who's what, who's this, who's that. How are you going to adjust in the face of adversity? And as you said, a lot of people have to spend time alone. That's anxiety, you know, like a person you thought, oh, well, you know, that person's very socially active and this, that, or what have you. Well, that's been taken out. Now, who are you? That's just one attribute. And you thought that was the biggest attribute you have. Come to find out, that's just a minuscule. You have all these other things you have to be accountable for as well. Ooh, look.
And I would say that's why so many people are leaving their like minimum wage jobs. Because once you face that fear, you're never the same.
Yes.
Like you're a whole other human being.
Yes.
Like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
I functioned on whatever $100 a month, you know, for a year.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or I got unemployment and I kept half of it in my pocket and used the other half. Now I'm gonna hang on to it. Like I reduced my life to a minimum, so I know that I can survive on a lot less. And so that now I'm willing to do it for longer, so that I can go for what I really want, as opposed to pretending that I can't have what I really want. Because I'm scared of what it would happen when I lose. Like I'm scared I'm gonna break if I lose what I'm attached to. Mm-hmm. Like there's so much power in discovering we don't break over the things we thought we would break over.
We are much more resilient than we think we are. And look here. Dr. Rita now, come on now, okay? We dropping these jams for us, people. I don't know now. I mean, you're not going to get this on Dr. Phil. I can tell you right now. You're not going to get this on Dr. Phil, okay? All right?
I love your energy, Chai.
Okay,
it's
seriously.
Priceless.
I'm just telling you.
Priceless.
All right?
Love it.
So, as I, was talking to you before, I snooped, all around, and I came across a couple of blogs that you have written. We'll talk about those later, that, you all can go to and check them out yourselves. And, if you're anything like me, it will bring you great inspiration and great introspection as well. But moving on from that, you talk about collective trauma being in the driver's seat. Now, I want to talk to you about that and how can we pivot from that into a better space, mentally, physically, life-wise, society-wise.
I love how your questions are all connecting the dots. Kudos on the order in which you're choosing them because they all build up on the prior conversation, right? First, I have to say that I want to speak with this with a lot of humility because I'm still in the discovery myself. I feel like I'm just on I'm a few months away or about a year away from really getting complete with my personal trauma, my childhood trauma. And so I think the collective trauma piece is still one that I'm still in discovery about. So some of this is a little bit more conceptual for me than lived. So I think of this, first of all, I want to say that all our institutions were grounded in fear is what in my book I call white male trauma in the driver's seat. So basically, the rich white dudes and the poor white dudes that migrated from Europe had been persecuted or were hungry. Christopher Columbus came from a family where his dad was at risk of getting locked up. They were in a ton of debt. The business was in his name so that his father wouldn't get, his father's property wouldn't get seized by the banks, right? So he wasn't in a prosperous financial situation. He was a pretty desperate dude. It's a cool article called like Bold Men, Desperate Acts, I think it's called. And it's all about like what was behind Christopher Columbus and Amerigo Vespucci and why they were so desperate to find new land and find new routes of trade, right? So they're basically struggling. And so when Christopher Columbus lands in the Americas, you know, clearly in his diaries, he says that native people welcomed him. And without native people, make no mistake, like there's no way Christopher Columbus would have survived. Just no way. Because they didn't know where to get water. Like they come over on the ships, their water runs out, all they see is ocean. They didn't know where to get sweet water to drink. So had the natives not shown them where the river water was, like there's no way these Europeans could have survived. Plus, native people literally showed them up and down the coast of first the Caribbean and then what became North America. So basically the reason why they were able to discover my butt, but conquer, right, the land that we now consider the Americas is because they had guides, right? And one of the things that like really has me sit, and I talk a little bit about this discomfort in the work of the past 2 years, is that like, how do you get welcomed? And plus Christopher Columbus was Italian, right? So I'm like, you should have been better raised than that, damn it, right? Like, how do you get welcomed by a whole culture to the point that you're given water without which you would have died? And you turn around and say, oh, let me take 25 of these and bring them back with me and enslave them. Like, how does that work? Right? Like that's not our culture. So how does that happen? That is trauma. That is trauma. To respond to being welcomed with aggression. Like, I don't know what was there in his past, but to respond with kindness, with aggression, something happened to you. Our trauma experts would say today, right? Like something broke in you. And then everything that you created after that builds upon this foundation, the seed. So the fact that fear is the backbone of our society is in and of itself collective trauma. Because it means that we decided that in order for my needs to be met, I needed to fight you. Because I didn't believe, and this is the European trauma, I didn't believe that our needs could be met together, which is why native societies are so different in how they're set up than European societies, right? And indigenous European societies were also different. But Europeans aggressed against that too, right? Because there were indigenous Irish communities that had common lands. There were indigenous Etruscan communities that had common lands in Italy, right? But there was an internal aggression in Europe before the external aggression, right? But there is a collective trauma that's handed down centuries, and then we built our institution on basically institutionalized fear. And then we keep it for generations, and we know that from epigenetics that trauma gets handed down to even 3 generations at a time, right? So we're all carrying things from our ancestors, right? And we may not look the same, so we may not carry the same history, but there's some level of pain and trauma that we all carry with different reasons, different historical events, but not similar in degree, but similar types, right? Like there's pain in everyone's family. There's sexual abuse, murder, right? Whatever family you look at, if you go large enough and wide enough, you're gonna find that kind of pain. And so we carry this stuff with us. And plus we carry this heaviness of societies built on the backbone of fear. And so how do we transform that? So first we have to do the work that it takes which is a lifetime of work, right? To unpack and release and free ourselves from the personal pain that we have, which is mainly our childhoods, but of course it's adulthoods. It's what does it look like to live in a society where social oppression is normal? Like, what does it look like to live in a society where my brother's pain isn't my brother and I have to numb my empathy so that I can just try to get to work today, right? Like all of that. And then I think some of my so I'd like to say, like, kind of like you do your personal work and then you work on your collective work. And it doesn't work like that, though. What happens most often, all my spiritual teachers will say this, is that when we do our personal work, it's like it creates a grove in the universe that makes it easier for others to do theirs, right? So when we give ourselves permission to heal and envision and live beyond fear and be a bigger, brighter, bolder version of ourselves, then others get permission to do that too. Because suddenly we see each other, we point at each other, and we go, wow, that's possible. I didn't know that was possible. Me too, right? And so the collective also shifts. And the more of us shift individually, the more of us can shift collectively. And the day that we have healed enough individually, the systems won't hold, because it will be unacceptable to have a system that, incarcerates Black men at whatever times the rate of someone who looks like me, right? It would just, I won't be able to go to sleep at night until that's done, right? Because I'll be so in tune with myself and what I feel in the empathy of brother to brother and person to person that it won't sustain itself. It's sustaining itself now because we're living in that illusion that the collective trauma is the truth, that it's crabs in a barrel, that I have to go against you to get my own, that the only way to make it is the fake it till you make it. Think about all the sayings we tell ourselves that are complete BS, right? Like the fake it till they make it, I'll trust you if you treat me well first. Like all the things that make us smaller than we actually are.
Look, okay, so it's very funny that you say that, because the second part of that question, the back end of that question, sort of deals with what's going, today in these days and times. And I know doom scrolling is what I call it, but I'm just going to ask, in your opinion, what part, does social media also play in this? Because as I said, doom scrolling, you pick up that phone, you're watching these things, it has allowed us to see things from all around the world, and we're programmed to zero in on the trauma or like all of the bad stuff instead of focusing on what's nice and what's good in the world. Because as people say, there's no money in peace, but there's plenty of money in turmoil, what have you. So in that sense, in your opinion, what part has social media played in this?
I would say there's no money in peace because we're used to the turmoil and we seek it, right? So the turmoil has an energy. I'll give a personal example around this, and then I'll come to social media and just tell you, I don't know that I have answers for everyone. I can just share how I navigate it. As a person who tries to be informed and has a bunch of people all over the world, and so, uses social media just like, see friends, important things like friends' baby pictures, stuff like that. The trauma and the turmoil has a pull. So when we're accustomed to living at that level, it has a draw. So one of the things that I noticed as I began to heal, so in the earlier part of my life where I pretty much probably had a undiagnosed depression in high school and but I was the kind of depressed person who always has a smile on their face, right? Because I believed that the world would fall apart if people saw my pain. So I kept a good smile, life of the party. No one would have known like that I was depressed most of the time. And so I would go to sleep with the worst thoughts and wake up with the worst thoughts consistently, day in, day out, right? Like went to sleep feeling unlovable, woke up feeling unlovable. And then at some point, like I did enough healing work through Reiki, other things, right? And I started feeling a little lighter. So every now and then, like I'd go to sleep in a bad place, but I'd wake up in a good place. And I started realizing that I would do this thing. Like I'd wake up in the morning and go, oh, I feel really good right now. Oh, why do I feel good? I didn't feel good last night. Why was I upset last night? And I would be in bed for like 10 minutes or 30 minutes trying to look for the thing that I was upset about the night before. And of course, you know, by then I'd be upset again. So the pain has a pull. Pain body, Eckhart Tolle calls it. And so I think it's important when we're in the stages of healing where we're not quite accustomed to joy or to the amount of joy, because there are levels, right? I think we have to monitor it. We have to monitor, right? So I know that if I pick up Facebook when I'm miserable, I'm going to get off Facebook a million times more miserable, right? So if I'm miserable, what I actually need to do is go for a walk. Now, I'm not going to tell you that I'm perfect and I do that all the time. I often don't. But one of the practices that I discovered a couple months ago is I realized that every time I pick up the phone, my stance is, what do people want from me right now? Because generally it's a text, it's an email, it's somebody asking for something. So I'm actually ready to fight just by picking up the phone in the morning. So I started a practice of actually in the morning acknowledging myself and starting my day with, hey, you know, you're doing good, you're really courageous, you're trying your best, you're staying in the work, life is really uncomfortable right now, but you're sticking through it, you're learning, you're healing, whatever it is, right? Or you tried really hard yesterday and it went really bad, but you tried. So I acknowledge you for that, right? So I just would start, or I would go, today I love you because. And it took me like, I think a couple of months before I was able to say, good morning, I love you, just because. But I had to train myself to do that. And I would just sit with the feeling a little bit before I pick up the phone and the social media and the text messages and the email. And so I think, I don't think it's so much, well, of course, there's a lot we could say politically and sociologically about Facebook and social media and all the misuses. But since we're in the conversation of healing, I think like everything, we just need to pay attention to what actually nurtures us and brings us joy. And if it's not bringing us joy, then why the hell are we investing so much time in it?
Okay, all right. Look, you said something very profound, you know, like if I'm going to sleep in a bad mood, I wake up in a bad mood, you know, my programming, as soon as I pick up social media, you know, I pick up my phone and I'm scrolling through social media, I'm not looking for anything that makes me happy because I'm just not mentally in that place. I'm not at that level. And these outside circumstances, I'm letting that affect my, you know, bad mood or what have you, and it's taking me deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper, and now I'm just, as I said before, now I'm just festering in this, like, you know, downward spiral. And something, you know, as, you know, great as animals being rescued, I don't want to see that, you know. I know that brings me joy. I mean, I'm just going to put it out there. I mean, I love to see animals being rescued. I love to see animals being pulled out of, you know, these like situations, and now they're like, you know, progressing and they're great. You know, that works for me. And you're right. I have to, like, me personally, I have to work and I have to be conscious. Like, okay, I'm going to pick up this phone. what am I going to do when I pick up this phone? Am I going to scroll? Am I looking for the negative? Or do I really, want this positive over here? Or why even pick up the phone? Do I really need to pick this phone up? I know it's drawn to me and I know it's here. I know it's very, convenient. Or even getting on a computer. Like, okay, am I going to leave this nasty email, because my life is just like, I feel in shambles or what have you? Like, well, your life's not in shambles. It's just where you choose to, put yourself mentally and physically, So let that go. Let that go. And I'm so glad we're talking about this because my next question segues into this. And you've spoken on it like a few times, but we're going to talk about it. How has Reiki therapy, I want to say, how has that helped you in your life?
So I would call Reiki a practice instead of therapy. Just Reiki. A little potato, just.
Okay. Okay.
So Reiki is the basic practice of really a laying of hands. It's a practice of transferring energy from your hands to another part of your own body or someone else's. And although the name is Japanese because we say it was rediscovered in Japan because there's a number of practices that come in the Japanese tradition, really Reiki is as old as humans. So Ty, when your tooth's hurting, what's the first thing you do?
Oh my God. Yeah, right.
Or like the aunties and grandmas and, in a couple of years, you and I, people rub their knees when our knees hurt, right?
Oh, yes.
So, right, like I feel like every time I think of my aunties, my older aunties, I see them in the eye of my mind rubbing their knees. And there were studies done by, actually, interestingly enough, a scientist of NASA wrote a phenomenal book called Hands of Light, and basically studied the energy of the human body the way she had studied the celestial bodies. And what they discovered is that there is a uniqueness to the energy that comes out of our hands, right? So for me, Reiki is a spiritual practice. It's more than the physical kind of helping my body feel good. But honestly, it started as just helping my body feel good. I had chronic migraines at 27, and a friend of mine, interestingly enough, after a date, just was like, I was in this workshop, let me try this thing, and just kind of put his hand over my heart, not touching me even, for like 5 or 10 minutes. And I was totally bugged out and freaked out because I could feel it was intimate, although he wasn't touching me. And I was like, what the hell are you doing? Get off of me, right? It's like, Rita, come on, you've known me for a year. I'm not going to touch you. Like, breathe. And my headache loosened up for like just a little bit, right? So I was accustomed to chronic pain, and just suddenly it loosened up a little bit. And so since this person was a therapist, he goes, so what are you going to do about that pain? Right? So he was good at like not enabling me, but really saying to me, like, you're 27 and you're living in chronic pain. What are you going to do about that? So that's how I walked into Reiki. It's hard to describe what it's done for my life. I no longer have chronic headaches. I used to, at pretty much between 13 and 14, I had the same knowledge of medicine that my grandmother had. Like I had a fever 4 times a year. I had a sore throat around 6 times a year. I was sick a lot. I had like really intense stomach cramps. I fainted that time of the month. It was just, I was a pretty dramatic little kid for what I was packing a lot of pain in a 13-year-old body. And all those things are gone. So that's at the physical level. I also used to be one of those people who couldn't sit still. Like I'd fidget a lot, right? It's like the people that if you looked up all over the place in the dictionary, you'd find my picture. and there's an ability to be present. That's increased. I don't want to say that I'm the most present person in the face of the earth. There's still things there that are healing, and some of it is just fiery, perky personality. But I think wanting to drop in my heart, which is a big part of what Reiki has taught me. I think there's a place of comfort to go to when life hits me hard that I just didn't have before, right? That I can literally lie in bed and Reiki myself, because that's what's amazing. Reiki, you can Reiki yourself in your sleep. You can do it. You can do it in bed. So it's just a comfort that whenever life hits me hard is my go-to now. And as a person who was raised in an extremely conflictual family, I didn't have any self-soothing techniques. So I didn't know, when life hit me hard, I went to bed and then I hit myself harder. Well, you should have done it worse, but because you, right? I was even more critical of myself than life was. While what this has given me the ability to do is to pause and just feel and let it blow over, right? Because in the process of a Reiki treatment, you can literally just feel the shift. And you don't, of course, if you're attuned and you find a teacher, you can do it with a maybe faster, quicker, more aware. But, for those of us who are listening and for yourself, any time that you feel anything in your body, you can just hold your hand there and just hold it, instead of holding it for a minute or 2 minutes, which is what we usually do, just stay there for 10, stay there for half hour. Just stay there until whatever the discomfort is blows over, and you'll get a little taste of that.
Okay. Hey, look, I told y'all at the beginning now, we're talking about the metaphysical, okay, all right, and we're going in, all right, inside, mind, body, spirit, all of that. And, let me just say, I like that. Being a kid, growing up, you watch cartoons, and sometimes, you would see things, okay, I don't even know what they're doing. But there's these practices, as you said, it's an ancient Japanese practice, you say? Correct?
I would say it was rediscovered in Japan. It's as old as human beings, rediscovered in Japan. Okay,
so rediscovered in Japan, probably more than likely goes back further than that. But I will watch these cartoons, and even sometimes, with Bugs Bunny and all these things, you'll see something crazy happen, and you'll see someone come in and, the shaman come in, rub their hands together and, and then next thing you know, it's oh, hey, I'm feeling good again, and you see it as a joke, in your childhood, and it gets into your psyche. But in reality, oh no, this is really a practice, and this really does work. We just have to, as you said before, really get in tune, with ourselves first before we can be in tune with someone else, and, hey, if you're fortunate enough to, find someone who practices that, and you two are on that level, you will already know before you even speak certain words. Hey, you know what? Something about you is off. Come over here. Let me, practice on, in areas that I see something, this, that, or what have you. And just as a side note, I'm a big music lover, okay? And I've always heard about Jimi Hendrix, okay? And they talk about Jimi, and they say Jimi Hendrix used to see people's light before you see anything else. He would see your aura, your light, he was that in tune.
Yes.
People want to joke about the acid and all this other stuff, but no, Jimmy, if you were of a certain color, outward, your aura, what have you, oh, well, you had to be a very bright like aura. If you were like a very dark aura, he would stay away from you. You know, like he didn't want that in his, you know, in his space. And you know, I take those types of things to heart, you know, because hey, I know if it, like, who's to say that this doesn't work? Like, I think it does work. If it worked for Jimmy, hell, it can work for me too, you know. And you know, those are just different philosophies that I just carry with myself, you know, throughout life. And sometimes, you know, you can get blinded by, you know, certain auras or what have you, you know, because of other things you may have, you know, on your mind, or you may not be in tune at that point in time as you should be. But, you know, okay, all right. I want
to add two quick things. One is that Barbara Ann Brennan in that Hands of Light book, which isn't a Reiki book, but it's about energy, which Reiki is one of the many practices around energy. She actually teaches you how to see auras. So if you want to do the Jimi Hendrix trick, she actually teaches you how to see them. And most people through her direction can actually get to seeing them even if they didn't before. The other thing I wanted to share that I didn't say before around, I think your question was like what Reiki did for me, is that it had me understand that the fundamental nature of humans is love and goodness. Because, so first of all, my Reiki practice isn't just my own. Like, I've done Reiki on many people. I did Reiki at a mental health clinic for 10 years in Philly. And one of the things that I learned through my own process and other people, through my students, because I've taught it as well, is that everything that you would consider annoying or mean or selfish or like starts to disappear with healing. Like, the more we heal, the more the best of us comes out. Like, I am a much kinder person than I was 15 years ago, right? Grace is still tough for me because judgment was instilled in me pretty hard, but I have a lot more grace than I did 15 years ago, right? And so it just, being able to witness the healing process of myself and people around me, just like convinced me on the fundamental goodness of every human being, right? It's just, when we're not good, when we're not generous, when we're not loving, when we're not, it's just the wound that's playing out. That's it. But it's not actually who we are. Like, our essence is love. And at our essence, we're all as loving and as kind.
Okay, I love it. Hey, look, I love it. Like, I like that, you know. And as you said, hey, I'm still working on this grace, you know. But at the end of the day, it's not like what it used to be now. Okay, you know, like, oh, I'll just fly off the handle right now. But no. Let's take a step back. And hey, to me personally, I think that's what's needed. Like, you know, you sort of like a self-check almost, you know, pretty much in a sense, like, okay, yeah, I can fly off the handle, but what is that going to get me at the end? You know, if I take a step back and, you know, really look at it from, you know, this view and look at it for what it is, I will be a little bit better, and I can approach it the way I want to approach it. If I want to approach it, you know, certain things, and, you know, it's funny, like, everything doesn't need a response. Everything doesn't need a response. And I think sometimes we're just so used to responding. We're usually like, you know, we're going towards the reaction instead of like, okay, look, we don't have to have this. We don't have to have that. But if you want to react to it that way, you don't have to. You're only doing it because, like, in your mind, it's telling you to do so. But what if your mind told you not to react to it this way? What do you think will really happen? Would the world end? No, the world will still be here. You will still be here. Life, man, you're not going to like melt down. Nothing's crazy going to happen. There's not going to be a big earthquake or whatever. Like, look, take it slow. Take it easy. Take it slow. All right. Words of Bob Marley. Just take it slow. Okay. All right. Now, I want to talk about, as I mentioned at the top, you are the founder and CEO of Fierro Consulting. So let's talk about, Fierro Consulting and its mission.
So I was trained as a sociologist, and I've spent the past 20 years doing evaluation work. And what evaluation work is generally when programs get funding or businesses commit to a set of objectives, but in particular when nonprofits get funding, they make a lot of promises about things that they're going to achieve. And my role is to go in, talk with a bunch of people, collect some data, and find out if they actually achieved what they set out to achieve. And because I'm a facilitator at heart, I also kind of help them facilitate a reflection process and conversations to understand, okay, if we did whatever, 50, 80, 60 of what we said we would do, how do we get to the next 40 next year, right? Like, how do we move on a trajectory? Because no organization ever does everything, right? And so I started out as an independent consultant, and Fierro Consulting is now a team. I generally work in partnership, and it's taken me some time to figure out what the hell it is that we do that's unique. I think what we do that is unique is that it's still that concept of the seed and internal consistency that's important to me. So what I see is that many organizations talk about achieving results externally, but don't want to look at their internal culture. So part of what we do is build a bridge in the conversation with organizations between, okay, what is it that you're doing internally? And how do you expand and become really cohesive and consistent with what you do internally so that the results are just an outburst, an outgrowth of who you are internally? Unfortunately, we have a dynamic, especially in a lot of social justice organizations, where we think that working harder is going to get us justice. And so we don't give justice to people that we work with. And we think we're going to get justice for society as a whole. But we can't give what we don't have, right? So the question is, what is the culture internally that can birth justice externally, right? And so I would say that mainly what we do is that bridge between internal culture and external results. And it's a lot of fostering organizations in that direction, sometimes more on the cultural side. Like, how do we do equity internally in a stronger, better way? How do we do conflict in a better, stronger, productive way? Most of my work on the internal work is either conflict, trauma, or race. In my experience, organizations that do conflict well can do trauma and race work well. And most organizations come for the trauma, the race, but really at the foundation is they don't do conflict well. And so, because we don't see, our culture doesn't teach us that conflict can be productive and generative and creative. And actually that tension can make things come alive, right? And so, so on the culture side is like how to leverage conflict as a place of creativity, of great possibility. And how do we create an internal culture that's cohesive and consistent with what it is that we want to create out in the world? So how do we become more effective externally by working better internally? I think that's a big piece of what we do. Evaluation and organizational development are common fields. There's lots of people who practice it. That's what I say that we do. And so in terms of our mission and vision, the goal is always an equitable world for me. But it's not so much where we all have the same, but where we're all thriving. And I think different people want different things to thrive so that society is possible. And how do we bring it forth by creating workplaces that are more creative, more alive, more generative, and have less of this funk under the carpet that isn't being handled, which often is what saps the energy, the creativity, and the joy of workplaces.
Okay. Look, people, focus on the why and the how will eventually show itself, and you can put them together, and now you figured it out. A lot of times we focus on the how, and we forget all about our why. And that can be even in your daily, missions in life. You going to work, like, how am I going to get out of this? How am I going to do this? How am I going to do that? Instead of focusing on why, you always focused on the how. So let's get back to our why, people. Why? And we'll be better people. Don't worry about the how. The how will show itself in the end. Focus on your why. Okay, I like that. Get that funk out that carpet. There you go. All right.
Yes! Clean under the carpet.
Please clean under the carpet. Get the funk out, okay? Because look, it doesn't matter how much like carpet fresh you put on top and like sprinkle over and then vacuum. In the end, it's still gonna come up funk.
Well, we're going for sound bites. Niceness is not going to make an effective organization. It's not going to do it.
Niceness is not going to make it. Okay, you know what? I'm going to have to take that one later on. Just tell me. Okay, so now, as I said before, I've been snooping around, and this question pretty much has to do with what I was snooping around on your blogs, but I'm going to present it this way. We talk a lot about being empty, instead of full of regrets or what have you, when it comes to the end of our life's work. Being that you have done that on a national and international level, because let me tell y'all, Dr. Rita Fierro has been on an international level, okay, all over, all right? I'll let her talk to you about that, but she's been all over, okay? But, being that you have done that on a national and international level, what do you want your life's work to be remembered as?
So, for years, I said that my why of studying racism was this kind of event that happened when I was about 19. I was at a family dinner, and a person who had played a really important role in my political outlook, in like waking me up, right, made a racist comment. And I feel racism in my stomach. Like it makes me nauseous. It always has. And so I went to the bathroom, and after kind of crying and sobbing and emoting and doing whatever else I did, I looked myself in the mirror and I said, well, you care, and it hurts you. So you're gonna have to do something about this, because you can't expect people who don't feel it to do anything. And like the next 30 years of my life came from that promise to myself in the mirror. And last year, or in the past year, after the upheaval that I've talked to you about, I've revisited that choice and asked myself, is talking about racism and undoing racism really my life's work, right? And the answer I came to is actually in some ways, no. Because I don't think that, as much as it's taken up 30 years of my life, I think I'm a free spirit. And what happened is that the yearning is towards freedom. And racism is just what I saw was in the way. And I just went head first, the way I go in most aspects of my life, dive in full on. Based on your first question, I suspect, Ty, you're that kind of person too. Right? Dive head first, go in, all at once, right? And I think it was to kind of get racism out of the way, because I could feel in my body that it was making me sick. And it was the farthest from freedom I ever felt, was when racist comments were made at a dinner table or at an event or in my presence. And so when I think about my life's work, I don't know. I have a feeling what my next book is going to be. I've started writing it. I have suspect a little bit. But like, I'd love to make a contribution to moving us towards freedom. And there's a big us in there, right? Which, you know, I'm honored you started this conversation earlier telling me you had read the blogs and they'd spoken to you, and I'm honored by that. And there's also a tenderness for white people that is very new in my heart, having studied oppression so many years. So there's a big we in terms of seeing humanity move towards freedom. And then I'd love to make a substantial contribution for white people for the conversation to shift from racial justice to racial healing. For us to get really straight about what was done to us for us to do to others what we did. And that's also towards freedom, right? So that's like, but it's really having us make a substantial jump towards freedom. That's my highest ambition for my life's work.
I like that because, you know, as you said, even studying oppression for so long, and there has to, like, at some point you have to free yourself. You have to, like, change, you know, you have to turn, you have to repivot, because it's not all about this, you know, like, as you said, at its core, it's about love. And that's for everyone, you know, and you have to have love for yourself at the core in order for you to change and have that freedom, you know, to want to change as well. You know, like, hey, you know what, this isn't about, you know, racial past or racial tensions or anything of that nature. This is about me, like, shedding all of this, you know, hurt or pain that I've, like, you know, been attributed to throughout my life and growing up, and, you know, even my parents' pain and my grandparents and my great-grandparents and their parents, you know, like, as you said, like, that trauma carries on. And even for those who may sit high, you know, on the throne or what have you, they're experiencing the same type of pain. You know, just because they're high on the throne, you know, doesn't mean that they don't feel the same thing you feel. We've just been conditioned to think that, okay, since you're at this position, you don't know what it is that I've gone through. But in reality, no, everyone is going through the same thing. So how do we shed, you know, that pain? How do we have that true freedom? How can we truly be free? You know, and as you said, maybe not one person can change, but a collective can. So everyone, ladies and gentlemen, not just, you know, us over here and them over there, everyone come together, you know, to make the change, and we can be the change, and we will be the change. And I hope that I'm alive and we're alive, you know, to see that change. I don't care if we're old, you know, like pushing 95 or whatever. Hey, you know what? If we're pushing 95, great. And we can see things start to turn, wonderful.
Hey, if Du Bois could start Encyclopedia Africana at 95, we can too.
There it is.
We got a long way to go. I just wanted to offer something, a little twist to something you said. Mm-hmm. Oftentimes the resistance to talking about the trauma that white people hold is that we then go to this place that the same pain, right? So I would say pain is pain, right? And circumstances are different. And because the route to reconciliation is truth, we need to be able to sit with all the ways in which it's different, to then be able to go to the ways in which it's similar, right? And I just need to say that as a person who shows up in this skin, that I'm not trying to say that white people have to face our own pain so that we can poke black folk and say, well, I have pain too. Like, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that we would not have caused the harm we've caused had we not been wounded ourselves. And we have to come to terms to that.
All right, people, come on now, look. This is gospel, okay? Gospel, dropping them gems, whatever you want to call it, all right? Man, we playing the organ today, ladies and gentlemen. We playing the organ at church today, all right? We got you moving, all right? But no, I love it. I love it. Let me just, and I've told you this before, like, I am thankful for this, like, discussion with you. I'm thankful for this conversation, you know, like this, we need more of this, you know, on both sides, you know, not just, you know, you and I, but everyone. Like, we need more of this, because the more we have of this, we can see, like, I talk about people seeing you. How do people really see you? I know what we look like on the physical outside, but how like, do people really see you? You know, like, do they really know what it is that drives you? Do they really know what life is like for you and why you are the way you are? Instead of just looking at you for your physical appearance and what you may have on, all these materialistic things, like, how do people truly see you? Like, what is your real scope? What is the real expectation? You know, not necessarily of what people may expect, you know, from you, but what do you really truly expect from yourself? You know, and as I said, look, reading those blogs, ladies and gentlemen, man, she opened up the door. And yeah, like, I just had to let it go, you know, so that's that, you know. But let me ask, if people want to get in contact with you, if they want to follow you, social media, website, what have you, how can they do so?
So my main website, which is my author website, is just my name, ritafierro.com. That's R-I-T-A, F as in Frank, I-E-R-R-O, like the car, but 2 R's. And our consulting page is fierroconsultingllc.com. And social media, there's like Fierro Consulting has a Facebook page. On Twitter, I think I'm Rita S Fierro handle. And on Instagram, it's a little different. It's Dr. Rita Writes. So DrRitawrites.
Okay, all right, ladies and look, I know what I'm doing as soon as this interview is over with, but look here, people, seriously, like, you know, I wouldn't cheat you to beat you.
And if you're interested in knowing when the book comes out, the book is coming out on March 18th. If you're interested in signing up for the newsletter so you can know when the pre-order is ready and when it's on the market, you can just sign up for the newsletter on ritafierro.com.
There it is. Support, people, seriously, support. Closed mind is a lost mind. Open your mind up, okay? There it is. Mic drop. Boom. I'm gone. All right. So, Dr. Rita Fierro, we've come to the last question. Yes. We've come to the last question, but the question that my show is known for, so I will present it to you, okay? What is the one word that best describes you and why?
So creative. I went by intellectual artist for a while. I dance. I play the guitar. The book has some drawings that are not fancy because I don't really draw, but they're graphic recordings. They're images that help us process concepts because the concepts are really complex, and so it kind of helps boil it down, kind of break it down a little easier. And I just love color and art, and I love so you could say artist in a way. I love color and art, and I love relating to life with the subtle nuance that artists connect to life with. Like, I like paying attention to details of colors and textures and emotions, and I think there's just so much joy in life when we look at the details and we don't just look at the big picture.
Okay, all right. Snaps, people, snaps. All right. No, I've said introspective. You know, like, to me, that's just my word for you because, you know, just to backtrack to what you know, the question I asked about what do you want your life's work to be remembered as, You know, like for me, you've helped me in a sense, and this is before we even had our conversation, you know, just be introspective about what it is that I truly want in life. What difference do I really, truly want to make? I've always pondered that, and I've always felt that, you know, having this platform, oh, okay, well, if I can leave this platform, then, you know, people will see this, that, or what have you. But it's so much more than that. This is just a microcosm and like the big picture of what I truly want to do in life and set out to do. And, you know, I thank you. You know, I thank you. I thank the, you know, man, I thank your Reiki teacher, you know, for even like bringing, you know, those aspects that we talked about to, you know, to you, and, you know, you putting those like to life on your page, which I seen and read, felt, took it in, processed, and it just resonated with me. And now I'm taking it, you know, like, okay, well, what is it, people? You know what I'm saying? You know, like at the end of the day, what is it that we really want, you know? And introspective, like you have definitely given me that. So, you know, that's my word for you. Awesome, distinguished, creative, yes, all that good stuff. Man, look, yes, she's all that, ladies and gentlemen, all that. And I just, look, this has been wonderful. As I said before, this isn't stuff you're going to get on Dr. Phil or Dr. Oz, any of those other doctors. We got Dr. Rita Fierro, okay? All right, the real deal. Philly, y'all. Philly in the house, okay?
Philly in the house.
That's right. Hey, look. Boy, look. If you don't know, now you know. Get you with one of those cheesesteaks, you know. Or as they say out there, get the baby food. Don't get the chunks. Just get the baby food version and you'll be all right, okay? Geno's, what have you. It doesn't really matter. Go ahead and make it happen. All right. But on that note, I want to thank you again for, man, just coming onto the platform. And seriously, I say this, and I mean this wholeheartedly. You are considered family to Word with Ty Brownlow. Seriously. If you ever want to come back and bless us, we hope that you do, you know, with whatever you have going on. You are always welcome. These doors are always open to you.
Ty Brownlow.
Yes.
This has been a phenomenal experience for me. Thank you for your enthusiasm, joy, and the energy that, like, you brought such energy to topics that can be a little heavy sometimes. It's just your spirit shines through. Thank you. And thank you for welcoming me the way you have. It's been really a joy.
Oh, no problem at all, Doc. No problem at all.
And I will take you up on being family. I'm always up for being family.
Okay,
always up for more family. You never have enough family.
I mean, but it wouldn't be family if it wouldn't be some drama now. Come on now. Hey, come on. Hey, people.
Hey.
You know, but no. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, this has been Word with Ty Brownlow. I have been your host, Ty Brownlow. Remember, no one is worthless. No story is worthless. Follow me. All social media platforms at Word with Ty Brownlow. Or you can go to my website, tybrownlow.com. Get this wonderful, 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 much needed conversation, plus other great conversations and interviews as well. Dr. Rita, we're out. Peace.